Our next section covers global economic indicators, the listing of which and definitions were provided by TheStreetCom. That's www.thestreet.com. We begin with the APICS Business Outlook Index. The former American Production and Inventory Control Society, now the Educational Society for Resource Management, surveys its membership each month to measure employment, production, inventory, and shipments activity in the manufacturing sector. As with the Purchasing Managers Index, readings over 50 indicate growth, and readings under 50 signal decline. The next is the Atlanta Fed Survey, officially called the Southeastern Manufacturing Survey. This monthly survey clocks manufacturing activity in the Atlanta Fed's region, which includes Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and Louisiana. It closely resembles the Purchasing Managers Index, gauging production, shipments, new orders, etc. Its most widely quoted figure is its Industry Business Conditions Diffusion Index, calculated by subtracting the percentage of respondents reporting decreases from the share reporting increases. Thus, the more negative the value, the weaker respondents' assessment of overall business conditions. Beige Book. This is published 8 times a year by the District Feds. The Tan Tome is an anecdotal survey of economic conditions around the country. BTM Schroeder Weekly Chain Store Sales Index. This index, released Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, reflects the sales of 7 retailers: Dayton Hudson, Federated, Kmart, May, JCPenney, Sears, and Walmart. In addition to the weekly measure, economists pay attention to the year-over-year change. Next, business inventories. Officially called Manufacturing and Trade Inventories and Sales, this monthly Census Bureau report is largely a rehash of the durable goods, factory orders, retail sales, and wholesale trade surveys released earlier in the month. Economists want to know what's happening with inventories and sales at each stage of production, factory, wholesale, and retail. They get everything but retail inventories from those other reports, and they get that here. Car and truck sales. Each month, car and light truck manufacturers report the number of U.S.-produced cars and light trucks they sold in the U.S. the previous month. As with home sales, vehicle sales are an indication of the strength of consumer spending and optimism. Based on the monthly numbers, seasonally adjusted annual sales rates are calculated, and those are the numbers market watchers pay attention to. Although some economists prefer to wait a day or so for the total number of cars and light trucks sold in the U.S. during the month, domestic and foreign, and compare the seasonally adjusted annual sales rate to the previous month. Car makers report their numbers over the course of a day or two, generally during the first week of the month, and the totals hit the wires once all the companies have reported. Chain store sales. This monthly measure of how sales by 42 companies' chain stores that have been open for at least a year compare to the year-ago level usually comes out on the first or second Thursday of the month. It gives an indication of how the department store category of the retail sales report, which comes out a few days later, is likely to perform. It's compiled by Lynch, Jones, and Ryan, the brokerage firm that also compiles the weekly Red Book retail averages. The Chicago Fed Index. Officially called the Chicago Fed Midwest Manufacturing Index, the Chicago Fed's monthly index measures manufacturing output in its 5-state region relative to the level in 1992, when it was set at 100. The states are Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Chicago Purchasing Managers Index. The Chicago arm of the National Association of Purchasing Management publishes its monthly index, officially called the Chicagoland Business Barometer, of regional manufacturing activity a few days before the main NAPM index comes out. And the regional index often predicts what the national one will do. For both indices, readings above 50 signal expansion, and those below signal contraction. Construction spending. This monthly indicator measures the seasonally adjusted annual pace of new construction, private and public, residential and non-residential. Historically, construction has been one of the first sectors to suffer when the economy goes into recession. But this indicator is a relative latecomer. By the time the Census Bureau releases it, it usually just confirms what's already known. The Consumer Comfort Index. Compiled monthly by the Conference Board, which also calculates leading economic indicators and the Help Wanted Index, the Consumer Confidence Index is based on a poll of 5,000 U.S. households. Respondents assess business conditions, labor market conditions, and their prospects for income growth. Index readings are relative to 1985 when it was set at 100. Consumer credit. The Fed totals how deeply Americans are in debt, excluding mortgages, each month. Car loans, personal loans, and credit card debt are the biggest components. Creditors include banks, finance companies, and credit unions. Consumer Price Index. The Labor Department's second monthly inflation measure, the first is the Producer Price Index released a week earlier, tracks the change in the price of a fixed list of goods and services. The PPI examines only goods prices. The CPI mainly checks the prices of food, housing, clothing, transportation, medical care, and entertainment. A core rate, which excludes the sometimes volatile prices of food and energy, is also calculated. The index was set at 100 in 1982 to 1984. But economists care more about the month-over-month percentage change than about the value of the index. The Consumer Sentiment Index. This is compiled by the University of Michigan. The index is released only to subscribers.